What's up, guys? Quick video on my Novritsch ssg10. What I did to get the bolt pull a little smoother and to quiet her down. So I've already disassembled. If you guys don't know how to do it, there are multiple videos, but essentially you got 3 screws, Phillips, and 2 Allen bolts. I guess here in Europe you have a extra fancy Allen bolt instead of a Phillips there. Remove all those so you don't break your trigger guard, and then push down the receiver up on the stock. Boom, stock comes out. All I've done here is, you know, people put foam, whatever, just anything to fill the voids. I've put cloth in here to just fill the voids to quiet her down. I mean, I really didn't notice anything, but when you did knock on it, it was louder per se. So now that the voids are filled, it's a little quieter. So I just shoved some cloth in there, nothing too fancy. I heard people, you could use this foam, like the foam on your case is ideal. Barrel, another problem people are having is the barrel cap. In US, the paint is swelling and the BB is deflecting off the end cap. Take a drill bit, about the diameter of your barrel. I made mine a little wider and drilled her out, smoothed her out with some files around the end, sandpapered it, painted it, just to make sure that BB comes out nice and clean. And next we have the receiver. I get a lot of questions about this optic. I put a red dot on top of my scope. I do find it useful. It is zeroed about 30 yards. I could just red dot people. I mean, yeah, you could just eyeball them, but I mean, it's there, it works. Why not? From here, the only things you have left, I mean, there's no need to take out the inner barrel or anything. I haven't done anything to that. We have the trigger box is attached to your receiver in this fashion here. So it'll look something like that. You have 2 screws. You can remove those screws if you're deciding to actually do these mods or to fix your gun. Trigger box will come off. So all I've done here is just make sure it's tight. I've removed my safety, and then so this is the spring guide stopper. This is what's causing the problem with all the scratchiness, flakiness, shards, bolt pullness. It's this scratching on the cylinder sidewalls, and as we all know, the cylinder sidewalls are sharp as well. So what it's doing is cutting into the spring guide stopper. I've seen even one guy have his pretty gnarly cut. I actually did not play with mine before finding the problems and fixing them, just because, you know, other people actually did and then complained about it, and I actually had my gun for 2 weeks before I got to go play, so I got to fix all the issues before going to play. So I have minimal wear. I mean, I have a small line here. I've filed and removed a small amount of material just to make it smooth, and that's all I've done. We all know on the spring in here you can put a piece of shrink wrap the size a little bit smaller than the spring in there, just for when it opens and closes or does its function. It doesn't make a noise, but when I'm playing, I don't notice that noise, and I don't really want to put it in there just in case it impedes the gun somehow. So then we have our receiver with the trigger box off. You could slide your bolt out. One thing I do want to mention is make sure your guide rings are in place. I know we're all having a problem with the guide rings being too loose and cylinder wobble. I don't know I know people are complaining they're missing. I've noticed mine are there, and when I do have my bolt in, as you can see, I have almost no cylinder wobble. I mean, there's a little bit, yes, it has to glide in there, can't be snug, but even racking it, it's gliding tolerances are good. So I didn't have an issue. I know a lot of people did. One thing I did want to mention is make sure your guide rings are there. Put some silicone on them. If you, I mean, God forbid if they're sharp, take a file to them. Take one, you know, these are my little files I like to mess with. Take a file and just make sure there's no little burrs in there. And then that's all. I haven't done anything to the receiver. And then the cylinder bolt. What I've done, we know the sharp cylinder edges are cutting our bolt, and they're cutting the spring guide stopper. It's making a scraping noise on the spring guide stopper. That's where all the scrapings come. That's the only thing that's scraping. So you have here cylinder head, a little bit of lube on there, keep it airtight. Got your bolt. So you notice on my bolt, minimal wear, again because I caught the problem before I went and played, or you guys as a community caught the problem before I went and played and installed it. So you got your bolt there. Got your spring here. One thing I've noticed about, again, in the community is some people's springs are cut. I was fortunate enough to not have a cut spring. Yeah, on top of that, I have filed just the ends, just a hair, just to make sure there's no grinding on the inside of the bolt. Just nice and smooth. It's just something you could check. Not necessary, but just something, you know, because the whole assembly, I mean, if you break it down, it's compressing in there and then catching on your trigger. And when you pull the trigger, your trigger's releasing and the whole thing's slamming forward, right? To give you your air needed, your FPS needed to shoot, right? So I made sure there were no scratching noises in here. Same thing on here. Make sure there's no burrs, you know. This should be very smooth, but again, smoothness here. Also, I noticed on my spring, one side was kind of chromed out, and the other side was kind of plain. I noticed when I put the chrome side on the spring guide stopper and the kind of non-chrome side inside the bolt, it's quieter for me. So there's that assembly, and then here's the problem. To get it all out, I cleaned this down, shoved a paper towel in there, just made sure everything, all the nasty stuff was out of there. You're going to need to do that anyway after you file this or sand it. I mean, I used a file. You could use wet sandpaper or whatever, you know, you want to use. But I use this file. I got this file that has a round side, a flat side, and a point. Works good for me because I could do anything with it. Get in places, round a thing, flatten a thing. So here, we're rounding it. So I use my round side, and what I've done is just file the inside of this wall. Just a hair, come around the top. I'll use the round side on the top and file that down just a hair. Making it nice and smooth. Now when I filed it, there was not a lot of shrapnel and stuff that came off. It's not like I really went at it. I just, you know, watched the episode of TV and just went back and forth, you know, for 20 minutes, making it nice and smooth. From there, just make sure you do get all the little things that came off. Just shove stuff in there, shove a old t-shirt in there, and just get all the stuff off. Get it all out of there. And then all you're going to do is just reassemble. Get that in there, spring guide, lube her up. I just drop her in there. Might want to be a little more gentle. Make sure your spring is actually on your spring guide. I don't know if you could, I don't know if it's possible to completely miss it, but do make sure it's in there. And then put your bolt in. Obviously get everything nice and lubey in there. One trick I saw was put a drop of silicone in there, run your bolt in backwards. You'll put a nice even coat because the head of the bolt fits in there nice. Down your thing, pull the bolt out, and then insert, you know, back the normal direction. Get your spring in there, get your bolt in there, just get your cylinder head back on there. boop, hunch it down, and just do it all in reverse. Your spring, your trigger, receiver, put it all back together, and what you'll notice is when you're pulling it back and forth, it should be a lot smoother. One thing I do want to mention too is the bolt pull. I mean, you could make your cylinder walls smooth, your spring guide stopper smooth, and you know, but if you're not pulling your bolt straight back and straight forward, you're gonna have your spring guide stopper scraping on your cylinder walls. Bottom line, period. You know, and so you do want to have the straightest bolt pull possible. And so I know Novritsch put a video on this, but I'll just cover it really quick. We're gonna slide this in here, and you'll notice if it's not assembled, just smooth, and it should be somewhat the same when you do assemble it. So flip it up. I pull it back a hair. I see people grab it right here. It's like, flip it up, pull it back a hair to where you can fit your finger almost where the bolt handle attaches to the cylinder. And then I get it, and then I'll put my thumb on the outside edge of the cylinder, giving an equal amount of force straight back and forward on my bolt pull. That way I'm not torquing it front, torquing it back, you know. So this, again, the spring guide stopper is not grinding on your cylinder walls, and you could get a nice smooth bolt pull. Other than that, that's it. Reassemble. Remember to not torque down these two very tight. It will torque your receiver a little bit, making your bolt pull not straight as well. So you'll notice you'll be able to pull it out. When you go to push it back in, it'll be resistance, and that's because, again, you've tightened those bolts down. So let me know if you have any problems, and I could help you through it. You guys have a great day. Later.